Alrighty. Good evening. As the chair of the Historic District Commission, my name is Patrick Gordon, and I am declaring that this is an emergency. That emergency exists, and I am invoking the provisions of RSA 91-A:2, Roman numeral 3B. Federal, state, and local officials have determined that gatherings of 10 or more people pose a substantial risk to our community and its continuing efforts to combat the spread of COVID-19. In concurring with this determination, I also find that this meeting is imperative to continue the operation of the town government and services, which are vital to public safety and confidence during this emergency. As such, this meeting will be conducted without a quorum of this physical body present in the same location. At this meeting, I also welcome members of the public accessing this meeting remotely. Even though this meeting is being conducted in a unique manner under unusual circumstances, the usual rules of conduct and decorum apply. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their name, please also state whether there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting. My name is Patrick Gordon, and I am the chairman of HDC. Julie?
I'm the select board rep. I'm at home and I am alone.
I should mention I am alone as well. Pam?
I'm Pam Jedham. I'm alone in my room.
Okay. Curtis?
Curtis Boyden, vice chair, here alone.
Doug?
Yeah, I'm here in my lowly room.
And Gwen?
Yeah, Gwen, planning board rep, and yes, I am alone.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That completes the roll call for the HDC commission members. Tonight is Thursday, May 21st, 2020. It's approximately 7:00 p.m. and we'll get started with new business under public hearings. The application of the Ayoka Properties Llc for a change in appearance, including the window replacement to the existing structure located at 53 Water Street, formerly the Ayoka Theater. The subject property is located in the Waterfront Commercial District, and it's tax map parcel number 73-34. This is case 20-3. So I would ask that the applicants prepare their presentation for everyone. And prior to that, I would like to use this opportunity to have this first meeting really as an introduction of the project to not only the commission members, but to the entire public. This, as a very substantial building for the fabric of Exeter, is going to receive, I assume, a lot of attention. And we really want to make sure that everyone has the information, has been able to see all of the articles that are being submitted for the application, and be able to submit comment, and that all voices can be heard. So with that, I would encourage the applicant, whoever is going to represent them.
And Patrick, I have my hand raised. I'd like to say, I have a couple things to say before the presentation.
Certainly.
I just would like to reiterate for the public that the Historic District Commission has a certain purview. And if people are interested in discussing the use of this building, this is not the appropriate place to do that. We are only looking at the appropriate treatment of the building, the exterior and materials, et cetera, not what's happening inside, not how it's being used. So keep that in mind. We are under the whatever the word is, of Article 8 of the Exeter zoning ordinance. So if you want to look that up on the planning board page, there are the rules that we run by. But I also would like to say, many of you know that I was a past member of the Exeter Theater Company, which tries to raise funds to purchase the Ayoka. And that has since disbanded. This effort was unsuccessful. And so my connection there is gone, and I will treat this as a disinterested party in my role.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. I have another hand raised for Sharon Summers. Sharon, you're on mute.
There. Is that better?
Much.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Sharon Summers. I'm an attorney with Donahue, Tucker, and Chiandella, and I'm happy to report that my Zoom experience with this meeting so far seems to be going better than it did with the selectmen the other night. In any event, we are, first of all, I appreciate the comments that both you have made, both you and Julie Gilman. We are here tonight for the Ayoka Development Project, with the owner of the property being Ayoka Properties Llc. We also intend tonight to introduce the project work session setting, both to the commission and to the public. And our intent and our hope is to obtain input from the commission members in order to guide us in making a further presentation to this commission at the next public hearing, and then to ultimately get approval for our design proposal. I'm going to turn this over to the architects to speak, but before I do so, I first want to introduce the Ayoka Properties Llc as the owner. The principals of that organization are David Cowie and Jay Caswell. And the architects are Market Square Architects out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And the lead architects for this project are Adam Wagner and Christina O'Brien. The materials that have been submitted by the development team to date consist of a May 4th application package. Some materials were then supplemented on May 14th, and then we have a PDP presentation tonight, which Adam and Christina will be showing you shortly, which reflects and really expands on some of the materials that have been previously submitted as part of the application. We look forward to working with this commission, and we welcome your comments and questions this evening. And with that, I will now turn it over to Adam Wagner of Market Square Architects.
And good evening. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you very much for hearing us this evening. As Sharon stated, my name is Adam Wagner. I'm a partner at Market Square Architects in Portsmouth. And I'm joined here tonight by Christina O'Brien, who will serve as the project architect for this project, and Whitney Belton, who is our project coordinator and has been working diligently on the existing conditions of this building and on some of the documents you will see here today. So with that, I'm going to put up a PowerPoint presentation, and hopefully I can get permission to do this. And let me know if that worked.
Yeah, I think it did.
All right, so you should be looking at an exterior rendering, a cover sheet for and what I've done here tonight, we've put together, there are about 17 slides. And what I'd like to do is walk through the entire presentation. I know there are particular items that you're going to want to get in more depth on, understandably so. But I think if I can get through the presentation, give you a holistic view of what we are proposing here, then we can get into the minutia and hear the public comments and your comments on what So with that, I'm going to go right to slide 2. And here we have a simple dimensional drawing. This is the proposed elevation for the redeveloped building. And I'm going to get into the nuances of what's different between this elevation and what's existing now. And we'll also be talking about some things that are existing now that we don't believe are historic to the building that we'd actually like to bring back to their original grandeur. So I start here just to say, here's what the proposed elevation is. As I'm hoping you can recognize, we're not talking about doing anything outlandish with this building. It's really one of those buildings that we found the particular detailing of certain elements, and I'll be getting into that in further detail. With that, I'm going to move to the second elevation. Now, just to the right side of the building, there is a very narrow alleyway that gets down to the river. And this is the elevation of that alleyway. It's certainly not a prominent elevation of the building, but it can be seen from the street, and we are proposing some changes there. So this slide illustrates what those proposed changes would be. And again, I'll be getting into all of this as we move through the presentation. So slide 4 here, just for reference, these are some existing photos of the building. These have been taken within the last week or so. And masks on, we've had boots on the ground there. As you can see by the dumpster, there is some demolition work going on inside. And we're using this time to really try to get our arms wrapped around the intricacies of this building. And there's some unique things that we've discovered. I'll talk about those shortly, but just to give you a reference point to this whole project, really this is the front elevation. This is a view down in the alleyway. This is actually the lower level of the alleyway, close, about halfway between the street level and the river level. Can certainly use some cleanup. And then lastly, we've got some photographs of the back of the building. Really just a blank brick facade with this bump out here. The next slide I'll show you, these are some of the historic photos that we've been able to find of the building. And with this building dating back 105 years now, certainly it has gone through some variations over the years. And we've been taking a very close look at any photographs we can to try to understand the difference between what may be there now and what was original to the building. And I will be getting into that in some more detail shortly. But this photo here, circa 1920, here we believe it's circa 1935. Those certainly aren't modern cars, so that time period dates appropriately. This photo, I don't have a year on. I'm sure we could tie it to some magnificent snowstorm at some point in history. But as I get into details on the windows, the doors, the signage, I'll be showing some of these images again so you can see what reference points we pulled from. With that, I'm going to jump here into slide number 6. And everyone knows the Ayoka building is a brick building, but with any building, there's more than that. So what we've really been looking at these last couple of weeks is what architecturally is in that masonry building that we want to make sure we preserve and maintain. So for example, we've learned that this is a 20th century brick. It has struck joints. There are different components, include row locks. The majority of the building, by the way, it's a running bond. It's not any other traditional bonds that it could have been. So we know that. We know there are these row lock decorative pieces around the precast panels. This is up on what's proposed to be the 3rd floor. And then you also have these precast panels here at the 2nd floor with the window arches. And then lastly, this photo down here, one thing you may not recognize about the Ayoka Theater is that it actually has 2 different colors of brick on it. And I'll show you another picture later on. And this is one of those little discoveries that as we continue to explore the nuances of the building, most of the building is red brick. Here at the entryway, they actually used more of a gray brick. And I have another photo that shows that even better, and we'll get into that. There is another photo here. I'm actually going to skip ahead in my presentation, but it illustrates one of the points I want to get across. Maybe that's not the best photo for it. But one thing we've learned is that, you see right on this edge here, when they constructed this building, they actually used a different brick for the front facade than they did for the remainder of the building. And I would imagine that's because the back of the building is a left and certainly doesn't have the quality of masonry detailing that they put into the front of the building. And it's things like that that we're using to inform some of our architectural decisions that we've put into this proposal. So here on the front, as I said, because we're proposing to put windows on the third floor, that would interfere with wonderful architectural items like the precast panels that say Mayor Building. So as part of our proposal, we're suggesting that that precast panel gets moved up onto the parapet level. Certainly, it shouldn't be lost. It's a wonderful feature of the building. But based on the use on the inside, we really need to get windows onto that third floor level, and the windows would interrupt where that precast panel is. So our proposal is to move that up along with the flanking precast panels. They're not shown in this photo here, but those would get moved up. So the overall image on those architectural design elements would be moved up, and they would be detailed in a similar way to what they are now. The same is true of these slip key headers here. So where windows don't currently exist and we're putting in new window openings, we would suggest matching that masonry aesthetic, certainly on the front facade, so that it's in keeping with the historic period at which the masonry was originally done. The next thing I'm going to move on to is, actually, where was I? There I was. Now we're jumping to here. So again, now I'll pull back up that front proposed elevation. This is the existing photo. This is our proposed. So in order to get windows here on the third floor, as I said, we would look to take these precast elements and move them up to the parapet level and rebuild those pieces. There's quite a bit of water damage in the parapet. A lot of that is going to need to be repointed anyway. And the new windows that we're putting in windows that would be consistent with the original windows of the building. And I'll get into that in the next couple of slides here in terms of what our research has shown us about those existing windows. But the first part here was specific to the masonry. And with that, I will jump into the windows. So right now there's a bit of a hodgepodge on the building. We took a look at what's there. And over here, you've got a 6/1. Down here, we've got a 6/6. Here, we've got a mulled 2/2. So really, we wanted to get back to the point where we had a better understanding of all these things, what's original. And with that, I'm going to jump ahead a slide and then end up coming back to this. But we found this historic photo, which we believe clearly shows 6/6 windows. You can kind of see it best right here. And the important thing about this photo is that this is a winter photo. And in the winter, the windows would have been closed. If I go back to some of those other historic photos, you can see in these windows, it looks like they may have been 6/1. The same thing with these windows here. But if you look really closely at this photograph, that mutton line on the window, we think is actually doubled up. We believe this photo was taken when the windows were open and that these were originally 6x6 windows to match this one on the first floor. So going back to where I was, our proposed solution to this is replace the existing windows with 6x6 windows. And what we would propose to do is a simulated divided light. These would most likely be a fiberglass window. But instead of doing single hung, which is what we think the originals probably were, we would propose to do a double hung here. And the reason for that is with the simulated divided lights, the windows get dirty pretty quickly. And with a double hung window, it's easier to wash it. So from an aesthetic standpoint, you're not going to notice a big difference. From a functional standpoint, we can keep the windows cleaner for a longer period of time. The other thing I want to point out here on the window slide is down here in the alleyway, you can see these arch top CMU openings. We don't have any great historical photos from down here, but we believe these were all windows at one point. And so our proposal would be to take this CMU block out of those openings, use the existing headers, you see the archway right here, and put new simulated divided light windows in their place. We haven't been able to document its existence, that is what was originally there. But we think common practical architectural sense tells us that that was the case. So really we're trying to bring back as much of the original as we can in regards to the windows. And yet at the same time, we do need to cut some new openings because of the function that's being proposed on the inside. And the predominance of that is here on the third floor level, some in the alleyway facade, and then certainly on the rear facade of the building. And I'll be getting to that in the slide shortly. So this I already discussed, the existing windows that are here now, the originals and what we believe they were. And with that, I'll roll into the doors. So here are the doors now. Clearly, these have been replacements. And this is actually a good opportunity to see that there's two different colors of brick here. This is really a reddish brick, and here you've got a much more gray brick that they use just at the entrance piece. So for the doors, we looked back and we found this image, which we read to be an 8-light door leaf with a raised panel of some sort here and a kick plate at the bottom. Now, unfortunately, when this building was built, things like the Americans with Disabilities Act didn't exist. Things like fire code wasn't quite as important as it is today. And these door openings aren't actually 6 feet as you would find in a normal building. They're significantly less than that. I think they're 4 feet 4 inches. So we can't really replicate what was there and remain within code, but we can replicate the image of what was there and try to get as close to possible to bring back the original design intent of the building. So down here, you can see these are the three main entry doors. So these 3 doors align with these 3 doors. And what we're proposing is to do an 8-light door that would be a full 3 feet wide so that we get the minimum clear width that we need for the doorway. And then do a side panel built out of the same materials and just do 4 lights there, but allow the mullions to line up as you move across. This is one of those things that we recognize just from a code standpoint. We can't really go back to what was original, but we can get pretty darn close, and the design will reflect much more closely to the original, certainly, than what's there right now. So next I'll move on to the signage. And I know we expect there's going to be a good amount of the sign. And so I'll get through this piece, but know that we'll all be coming back to that at some point. So the middle image here, everybody knows of this as the Ayoka Marquee. What some folks may not know about it is we believe the Ayoka Marquee only dates back to about the 1970s. And in fact, this shows the original sign on the building. And it says Ayoka in letters here and theater across the bottom. And then there was this canopy piece covering only the center door of those 3 doors down on the first floor. This sign is in quite a bit of disrepair. And we're currently working through options of what could be done with this sign. Certainly no one wants to see this sign end up in a dumpster. It's just too cool of a sign for something like that to happen. But we're exploring our options. We look forward to speaking about those options with you folks. But the marquee portion of it is in really rough shape. The letters are in okay shape. Very little of the original neon still exists, so it would all have to be reconstructed. And honestly, it's not very conducive to these windows, which will now be in use. They're actually in the back of what was the projector room now. And so we're looking at an option that really replicates the original sign of the building. So as I said, it's a blade sign, simple lettering. We don't know if it was lit or not. I would guess based on the age that it probably wasn't, but we're still doing research to figure that out. Like I said, I know we'll come back to this topic, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts on what opportunities you could see for this. So with that, I'll move slightly down from the sign. So as I mentioned, this is the original sign that we found for the building, but there was also this canopy down below. And this canopy only covered the center door. It didn't extend beyond that. So we're looking at what some of our options may be for the canopy. I think this graphic oversimplifies it a little bit. The reason why we pulled this graphic is that there are these stabilizer arms that kick back to the building, which if you look closely exists right here on that original canopy. So this is an area where we're going to continue exploring our options, but ideally we would go back to something more of the original sign and the original canopy. So with that, get back into drawings here. And this is just as a comparison. So here's the current facade of the front of the building. Things to note, the marquee sign here, the Ayoka lettering above, the Mayor Building precast here on the third floor with these flanking precast items. And again, we're looking to take that piece, move it up to the parapet level so that a new collection of windows can be added here on the third floor. And again, all of the windows will be brought back to 6x6 simulated divider lights. And we already talked about what we were proposing for the doors. Next elevation I'll show you, this is the alleyway elevation. So the two buildings are only 4 or 5 feet apart. You really never get to see this view just because you can't get far enough back from that facade. These are those blocked in arched openings that I had talked about. We're looking to open those back up, turn them into windows again. The rest of this facade is really, it's a blank brick wall, as you can imagine a theater building would be. And based on our new function, we are looking to put some small windows in here. Again, they would be 6x6 simulated divided lights to replicate the windows on the front. But we would propose not to do the masonry detailing on this facade in the way it's done on the front facade, because had these windows been constructed when the building was, we don't think they would have done that brick detailing the same way. Just like they used a less expensive brick to wrap the back side and the sides and the back of the building, we don't think they would have used those masonry detailings for the window headers and that sort of thing. Next facade I'm going to share with you is the back facade. So here's the rear of the building. And as you can imagine, with a theater with a fly loft, not a lot of need for windows back there. There is this wood frame bump out that was added to the building. And based on our function and what we've seen on other buildings along the river here, is that, you know, the glass on the other buildings and the outdoor balconies is much more celebrated because it was functional for those buildings. whereas for a theater building, it wasn't functional at all. But based on our proposed uses on the inside, we're proposing to build some decks off the back, put in sliding glass doors, and again, windows that would be consistent with the other new windows we're proposing for the building. This area here, which is actually the opening for the block out here, so there's no brick in there. We're proposing a little bit larger piece of storefront glass, and that ties in with the first floor proposed use. And the openings there, the headers there, we just think it would be a nice option to really create a beautiful indoor space coming out to that deck. Here we have existing elevation, proposed elevation. And with that, I will move to the next slide. And this slide is the other side of the building. So opposite the alleyway. There is a building that shares a party wall right here. So that's where you see the hatched area. So the only portion of this facade that you see is this piece right here. I think if you're not going to see it in the other photo. So again, there are two tiny little windows here, which are basically backstage windows. And we would be proposing to put in more functional windows, again, with the detailing of the window and masonry that's consistent with the rest of the backside of the building. Here you can see these decks. We are looking at putting something in the archway down here because it's really cool space and we think we can make it functional. And I think on a night like today, it would be a beautiful spot to sit out right by the river and have the water flowing right by. And then lastly, I'm just going to leave you again with the overall proposed facade of the building. All the components that I talked about in the last 16 slides here, moving the precast up to the third floor, replicating windows on the third floor to match up with what's on the second floor already, replacing the doorways on the first floor to go back to something that's much more historic, putting something back in that's much more reflective of the original sign of the building. And then we don't have it shown here, but we're exploring, again, what our options could be for that canopy. With that, I'll hand it back over to you, Mr. Chairman. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions that we can, and love to hear your thoughts and feedback. And what I'll do is I will leave this up so that if anyone wants to flip to a particular slide, I can do so.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation and for leaving it up. I'm hoping that others, if they were taking notes during this, were referencing their comments by slide at the bottom there of 17, hopefully. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call on our commission members for comment or questions for the applicant by going through. So I will start with Doug. Would you like to make questions, comments?
Sure, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great. Just a couple points. I think that I really miss having that canopy over the three entrance doors. I think it really helps to organize the facade, which is a brand new facade from the old building. It's a totally different type of facade, but helps to organize it. I actually really like it with that element added. I think the little canopy going down to the basement, it'd be nice if you did some design work on that and tried to make that into a special event, because I think that could be a fun space downstairs. And I don't know if everything has to be historic. I'm a little concerned about the entranceways, the accessibility of that. I noticed today when I walked by, there's a step in there, and I'm not sure how you could accomplish an accessible entrance without pushing those doors back, which would change the look a little bit. That might also help to give you some justification for a canopy and sort of reinforce that sense of entrance. Simulated mullions, I never liked those simulated ones. I like to either do the real ones or and I know you can buy those now with insulated glass. Something about them irritates me, but I guess the reason you picked that is it's less expensive, probably, or better. I mean, it's less expensive and better energy performance, but it still bugs me. And you can tell. I mean, you can tell when you get up close what's going on. So I'd give some thought to that. I know there's an old historic inn near my house that's been totally renovated, and he found some really nice insulated glass windows with the breakups. I didn't notice that you plan to use the waterfront area on the basement. That's a cool idea. That's very exciting. I'd like to go down there. Yeah, in terms of the I mean, mainly what we have here is a front facade. And I think the old facade, it's pretty clear there's something going on the second floor that doesn't need windows. I mean, there's some similar old theaters and Concord area and around the state. And you're totally changing the use. So I don't see any point in trying to replicate something that indicates that the building isn't what it actually is now. So I would hope the public will get some sympathy for that. I know that there'll be a lot of personal issues involved with this building. It's a very important building for personal reasons, not necessarily for architectural reasons. Though it is a nice building. So that's about it for me. I think I'm going on too much.
Thanks, Doug. Pam, would you like to share your comments, questions for the applicant? You're muted right now, Pam.
Patrick, if I could just jump in real quick just for a message for the public attendees. Sure. If you're in the meeting with an abbreviation or not your full name, we're only going to allow people to speak who actually have their full name on the Zoom. So if you leave the meeting real quick and come back in, you can type in your full name. And then when Patrick does call upon you or the chair calls upon you, you can state your name and address when we call upon you. So I see a couple people in the meeting and they don't have their names listed. So we just wanted to throw that out there. It should only take a second to pop out and pop back in again if you have the link ready. So.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Bob. Pam?
Okay, am I?
You just muted yourself.
Unmute me.
There you go. Go for it.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for doing all this wonderful work, because I have to say I was braced for the worst, and I really like what you've done. I especially like that you saved the Meyer building up here on the facade, because I thought that was going to go, and it looks lovely where you've put it. And you've put the two, I forget what you called them, but the little squares up there, and they look excellent. And I do like having the old sign, because that tells everybody it's the Ayoka Theater. And clearly the marquee was not going to work where it was. And yes, the Ayoka is huge in everybody's life who grew up around Exeter. The Ayoka balcony was where sex education was for 2 generations of Exonians. But this is wonderful. And what else did I? And there's absolutely no reason to keep all the details in an alley, which I don't think anyone's been down except a couple of rats for years. I assume the square up on the top is HVAC. And I really have nothing else to say, but thank you for all your work.
Okay, thanks, Pam. Curtis? you want to make some comments, questions for the applicant?
All right. First of all, is looking back at the National Park Service in the historic recommendations on conservation of signage on buildings. My concern is that we aren't preserving anything and that you're trying to recreate a history that's gone. This sign that you're putting on the building doesn't exist anymore. And I'm not impressed with an off-center sign that we're recreating a history. It just feels very Disney and not genuine when we recreate history. I'd rather see a preservation of aspects of the existing marquee that's there. I realize that maybe we lose the letterboard and it becomes part of a new marquee or an awning piece, and maintain the existing letters, perhaps use LED lights inside instead of the inefficient neon signage. But I think there's potential for preservation as opposed to what you're saying is take it off the building and put up something and recreate a history, which I'm not in favor of. I think that even though the front marquee may only be 40 to 50 years old, it's significant to the history of the building and it's a local landmark. I think a lot of people recognize the marquee that's there right now as a significant part of Exeter. And I think there's very few people who recall this blade sign on the building. My second comment is with the entrance doors, and it bothers me that we've given up on symmetry on the building. I realize that the ADA requires one means of accessible entrance into the building, which really means you only need one of these doors to have the 3.0 opening, which could have symmetrical side lights on the side. The other two, you could actually do a narrower opening, provided that you have an accessible route through the center door. So there's an opportunity there. My third comment was regarding the roof access, and you can see this sort of shadow that's floating up on the right-hand side of the slide that's up there right now. And it was also on the other slide back on the river. It just seems very heavy on the building. And I'm not sure if you're planning on making the elevator go up that high also, which is not necessary. I almost think it could be a lighter material that's up there. We can switch materials. We can make it so it doesn't look like it was part of the original building. It's not necessary to try to duplicate the brick when I build this piece up there, which, if we're proposing to have access to a roof deck, you do need a head height there for access to the stairs, but materially it feels heavy. That is all of my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Curtis. Julie, would you like to make some comments? Questions?
Sure. I agree with a lot of what Curtis said. I am concerned about the missing matinee thing. What do you call it?
Marquee.
Marquee. Thank you. I knew it began with an M. Partly because of the iconography of it, and as Curtis said, maybe it can be reconfigured in some way, but also because those doors are almost flush to the building, as they currently are, and as you're replacing them. And so I feel like there needs to be some kind of shelter for those entry doors. I think also I agree with Curtis on the symmetry going awry because of ADA compliance. And I think that there's some enterprising designer out there who can come up with a design that looks like a symmetrical door instead of a door with a side light. Those are my aspects for the front. And, thank you for preserving the precast panels. Those are really also an icon. I'm still mixed on the blade sign. I kind of agree with Curtis on is it appropriate? It is a replication of a historical feature, and we don't necessarily need to do that, but it's a discussion to go in with the marquee. How much change can you do to the marquee and also or not do this blade sign? It's interesting looking at your CAD drawings, the elevations, that when you put in the third row of windows, the third story, the building actually looks taller, even though you haven't added any height. So I found that interesting. And on the back, if you're going to use the river, the bottom level at the river for a deck and et cetera, you're going to block the air conditioning. That's how the building was air conditioned, from ducts from that lower section. That's why the sign that used to hang on the marquee that said air conditioned that's how it was, sucking up cool air from the river. But that brings me to a question which is not, again, in our purview. I'm just curious. Are you going to be disturbing the riverbed at all so that the Army Corps of Engineers has to get involved?
So
That's a question, I think, for Adam.
yeah, I'd actually like to defer to the development team on that, just because I'm not a civil engineer. I don't believe that is the intent to disrupt that.
Sure.
But if one of them could jump in, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's not the intent. I just, I just want to be sure you're aware that if that's going to happen, there's another layer of stuff you're going to have to go through. I think that's all I have for right now. I appreciate the work that you've done, and the side elevation is what it is, really. It wasn't ever meant to be a showy piece, and you're going to use it in the way it needs to be used for your use. So thank you for your, and I also do have the concern about the head height of the either elevator or stairway or HVAC, whatever's going up on the top there. We've talked about that with many properties along the riverway because of the view from across the water, that we want to see it screened, whatever you're putting up there, HVAC or whatever, that it's either screened or a color that blends with the sky, something that diminishes its bulk. And that's it.
Okay. I believe that's everyone that we've got on the board. So I'll take a few minutes to make some comments and questions. First one I have is a question for Adam and the development team about the construction sequencing of removing those precast panels. I assume that the only way to do that is going to be to jackhammer those out around the existing brick facade that's there to destroy the roll lock that's there to get that panel out and removed. Is that the thought behind that?
I think they can probably be saw cut out without hammering. Anytime you're introducing that level of vibration into a mix, you're asking for trouble. So I think, we haven't gotten into the detail of that, but I think a masonry saw could probably be used. As you can see, the mayor building sign is actually 3 panels already.
Mm-hmm.
You can see small joint lines here and here. So we're going to have to be very careful with how that's done, but that's really getting into construction means and methods.
Yeah, the question behind that would be that the preservation of the panels is obviously preferred, and we appreciate that. The manner of which that's done and not marring or scratching or cracking so that the panel then has to be recreated would be at the detriment to the elevation, I believe. So I just wanted to bring that up in comments. The second item I had was asking about the windows themselves. You had talked about having a simulated divided light fiberglass window that was proposed. The current window trims that are around there now, I believe when I looked at that last, that there is actually a molded, either an OG or a brick mold that is around each of those windows. Is the intention to replicate those window trims, and the level that they are set back in the elevation themselves, is that going to be mimicked as well? In those historic photos that you can see, the windows are set back. That is the south facing elevation. So not that they're creating a lot of shade necessarily by being set back maybe that 5 or 6 inches, but it does create a sense of depth. By bringing them out to the surface, you're going to make the building look very flat, and it's going to lose some of that dimension. So it's a question about how that was going to be treated.
Yeah, the nice thing is we've got a lot of brick depth exterior wall to work with. And I think we can maintain that plane that they're currently set in. We're going to learn a lot more when that first window comes out and we can understand how they were installed and then how we're going to flash them appropriately. But I don't see any reason why we can't maintain this depth. And yes, we will very much be looking at the trim of those existing windows and how we can put the window in its place that's very consistent with that.
So if you're going to be using the use of a fiberglass window, what would those trim materials then be that you're trying to use to replicate?
I think first option will be what sort of integral trims potentially come with the window manufacturer that we select. Do they have a historic trim package that closely matches what's there? We'll certainly explore that option. If that isn't going to be an option, I think we'll have to look at how we can custom trim out these windows. With the windows being fiberglass, ideally we would look at some sort of a non-wood product that we can match the profiles and mill the profiles without having to worry about the maintenance and the upkeep of a wood window. So that could be done in AZAC or plenty of other materials.
Okay. And is the intention to have the window fiberglass all the way through, or is that just going to be a veneer and a cladding on the exterior? Will it be a different material on the inside?
No, we were looking at fiberglass through and through, a full fiberglass window, not a wood window, not a clad window, I say.
All right. So when those windows then are removed, is the sills that are currently there now, I believe they're called out as roll-lock sills currently? At least that's what the depiction shows. Yes. Okay. So you'll take care to do the proper flashing underneath those windows to maintain those sills above?
Yeah, I was looking to see if I had a better close picture, and I'm not certain that I do. But I've done a lot of mill renovation projects in my career, and it seems like all of those buildings have slight nuances in how the window installation was done. And I think for a building like this, we're going to need to pop a window out to understand how that flashing is going to work, where that building sits, what it sits against. And we just honestly haven't gotten to that point yet. Okay.
So then I just asked to take care if there is any elevation or slope to those existing roll-lock sills for positive water drainage off of those to try to maintain that. And if they're not, if they are actually flat, the introduction of a new window being placed in there in new construction to flash it properly and create and use a subsill to actually create drainage away from where that's being set in. Next question I had was that you mentioned at the proposed openings, is it the intention to use the existing brick where you're punching new openings as the brick for the new window headers and such, or will it be new brick made to or try to be color matched as closely as possible?
Yeah, so I think in this case, trying to recycle the existing brick as it comes off and knock the bit is going to be it would be very challenging. What we would propose is that we go out and really spend a lot of time color matching a current brick to what is there now. And again, that's something that we need to get the samples and then we need to get it out there on site, and current conditions just haven't allowed us the flexibility to do that at this point.
Okay. So then I guess we would ask.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to add that we will want to do the exact same thing with the mortar color.
Okay. Thank you. Going forward, if this application proves to be successful, we'd like to request as commission members that we would do a field walk when those bricks are being sought after for color matching. Just because we've seen the new construction and the best available match color, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. So I would just ask for that courtesy.
Yes, absolutely.
Sticking with the brick theme, I believe it's slide 10 of 17 shows the depiction of the doors. Are we on there now? Okay.
Yep.
Yes. So the image that's in the upper left-hand corner that shows the original Front Street doors. Do you see the depth of the jamb of those original doors? So those are obviously, I would believe those are an in-swing door. And it would this picture would seem to prove that you have the depth of the wall to be able to replicate something like that in new construction, in lieu of pulling the proposed doors all the way out to the facade, on the front of the facade. It may give you some elevation, some pitch. I don't know, it would be ADA compliant that you may be able to ramp into the building. For that, but I believe that the brick that you had mentioned, that is the gray brick, is not actually original to the building. I believe that it was actually reconstructed when these new doors were put in, and they were actually made to fit the size of the new doors, and that those original columns were probably a little bit larger than that, and were probably that red brick, that original red brick. So,
it's worth exploring that a little bit further.
So I just wanted to point that out as an opportunity to perhaps inset those doors for your ADA compliance, to be able to ramp up to, because we are going to get into, in terms of ADA compliance, the clear door area available out in the public right away for entry into the building. And I'm not sure if, I honestly am not sure if we have the depth on the sidewalk currently that allows the public to pass by with also have that clear area available for the ADA compliance. So bring that up as a point. Julie stole my thunder a little bit on the rear first floor deck, and asking Army Corps of Engineers if there is anything that is going to be touching, and if that deck is anything but suspended above the waterway, Army Corps of Engineers is going to require a review, because that is overflow freeboard for any major storms. And they just redid all the flood maps, 100-year FEMA flood maps for the removal of the dam. So we know that they're very aware of the void space that's there. If a new deck was going there, they would need a reevaluation of that. And then the last comment I had, this slide would be good. Asking about, it appears that in the elevation, actually slide 16 of 17, if you could go one more. It appears that the balconies off the back are a true cantilever off the back, and that there is no sports brackets above them or cables tying back to the building in any way. Those are intended to be a true cantilever.
That is correct.
Okay.
Part of what's going on inside of the building is new structure on the inside that will allow us to do that from a structural standpoint.
So can we assume that these will be steel beams of some kind that have the 1/3, 2/3 span to create that?
Yes,
cantilever?
there will be supporting steel coming out of the building to hold those decks.
Okay. And then the last comment I had was about the marquee in the front of the building. And I would ask, we haven't seen any interior floor plans, not that we necessarily need to, but it seems like the current marquee that's there, the request for the removal of that marquee is really because it is impairing the view from the residential units that'll be in that area. Can you tell me on that second floor, how many units are there that this is then impeding the view of currently, or would be?
Adam, this is David
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah. So currently, this is David Cowie, one of the owners. So currently, there are 4 units planned for each floor.
Okay.
So that would be blocking the views of 2 of the units on the front.
2 towards the front. Okay. So then with the symmetry of the building, that center window is in one of those 2 units. So 2 of the windows will be blocking one tenant and 1 window will be blocked for another tenant, I assume.
Yeah, so we can share we have the friendly layouts of the floor plans for you, so we can definitely share that information.
Okay.
Yeah, we did get that in our packet.
The floor plan?
Yes, we did.
Okay. All right, I'll take a further look at that. So the questions that I wanted to pose or comments about the existing marquee, this is more a question for one of our commission members, Pam, as a representative of the Historical Society of Exeter. Do you know the current or the date that marquee was installed?
Not exactly, no. I want to say the 50s, but that's...
I was going to say 55. I think that's when it was, but I wanted to confirm with you.
Yeah.
There's an aerial picture of downtown that Ben Straczynski did, and I forget what date that was. Was it earlier than the 50s, or is it the 60s?
I don't know.
Well, I was asking Pam.
Oh.
I don't know either, but I will just say I think 55 is a good ballpark for the marquee going in.
Okay.
I'll ask my mom.
Yep, she'll know.
Did she see the first movie there?
No. She's not quite that old.
No, of the marquee. So the question would be, let's try to find the true first date of that marquee. I believe it's around the 50s. It is probably the single greatest architectural feature of this building, and as Julie had stated, the most iconic feature of this building. I don't think anyone can think of the Ayoka in Exeter without thinking of the current marquee that's there, and more so the question about the tenants that the current the view might be blocked from the current marquee that is there, and what that marquee stands for to the rest of the community, the messages that are shared on there, just the history behind it, I think is so ingrained in it that I want to make sure we're taking a lot of care to what the benefit of that marquee is to the rest of Exeter and the community, in lieu of simply serving the proposed tenants that may be in there. So I wanted to just raise that as a question. And in terms of it being in disrepair, I know the building itself has sat vacant and has been unused for a very long time. In that time, even then, the marquee with the current owner or the existing owner was being utilized. So it has still served a function even when the building itself was dormant, and it really proves to be one of the biggest. I'm going to say it's going to be probably the most controversial piece or portion of the application. So I'll leave that as my comments. So for the applicant, any of our questions or comments that we have raised, please feel free to rebut anything that we've said or provide additional comment or clarifications?
This is David Kelly again. To address the question on the rear of the building, we have been in touch with the New Hampshire DES in regard to the waterway there and extending that deck over the arches. The intention would not to be to disturb the riverbed.
Okay,
great. The Army Corps will have to be involved as well.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might just add, I want to say thank you for the feedback. The importance of this building to the fabric of Exeter is not lost on us. And you know, we're doing a lot of research, spending a lot of time trying to figure out the best approach going forward. And your comments tonight have been great. We look forward to hearing the comments of the public as well.
Okay, great.
Patrick, I have one more comment.
Sure.
And I think Doug does too. In regards to the marquee, the existing marquee, a certain type of individual that would want to rent one of these units might actually like looking out over the sign. I know it's ugly up there, but refurbished it can be better. But there's a certain urbanity to it, which maybe for downtown Exeter, you don't think of us as being urban, but this is an instance where, you know, somebody could have a different experience of the downtown because of the aspect of history that came in. I don't know if I've expressed that very well, but that's what I'm saying.
Okay. Doug, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, it's just a small point. I noticed in your report you mentioned a fire escape, and I saw on the photograph there was some kind of a steel structure that looked like a fire escape, but there's no fire escape shown in your plan. So is that gone?
So,
yeah, the bottom left. I went by there this afternoon. There is a metal walkway going to the door on the main floor. That looks like a means of exit from probably when it was a theater, second means of egress.
Where did that alleyway photo go?
But it doesn't, I couldn't find it on your plan.
This is David Cowie. The intention is to remove the metal fire escape.
Yeah, good.
Yes.
Yeah.
An interior stairway for
I was going to. It talks about building a historic metal fire escape. And I think, I mean, in a situation like this, the most important thing is just that it be safe, particularly in ice and snow. And I think that's higher priority than making it look historic. But I'm glad that that's just going to become a walkway. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. It'd be a step-down walkway.
Okay, that's much better.
I assume that walkway then would serve as a means of egress for that first floor deck along the river?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, gotcha.
And you can see the door almost in the middle there. It would be the inside egress. And the stairway going out from there.
Okay, great. So then I am going to now switch our focus over to those that have their hand raised from the public. And I do have a...
Hey, Patrick, may I interrupt a minute? I think Gwen wanted to say something.
Okay. I'm gonna ask that we use the hand raise feature as much as possible, just so that we can try to make sure we hear everyone's comments.
Can you show me where it is on this screen? Because I've known where it was until this sharing of the slides came up, and now I can't find it. So I don't know where to raise my hand.
Bob or Exeter TV, can you help Gwen with that question?
Well,
yep. If you are, if you move your mouse to the bottom of the screen, yep, you should have a little button that says participants.
Oh, yeah.
And if you click that, okay, it should be at the bottom of the list.
Okay. All right. Great. I will know next time. Thank you. And I'm sorry for that. I just have a question. In the packet, you talked about the paint colors that you had discovered as you were working on the building, and your thoughts were that initially these probably were, most of the windows were painted white, and I'm not opposed to the black windows that you have presented in the packet, in the presentation, and it does lend itself to a more modern feel, but I would just be curious to see what it might look like. And I don't know if that would be a massive undertaking to do a mock-up of this building with white windows. It's kind of a nice, in a way, it's kind of a nice soft look, and where the building is, it's big. I don't know that I want to use the word harsh, but it would be kind of interesting to see, and maybe the other board members would not agree, and I'm not, I won't fight for this one, but it would be interesting to see what it would look like, and perhaps see what it looked like back when the building was built and perhaps had white windows. That was, I agreed with a lot of what the other board members have said, largely about the symmetry of the front doors and the simulated mullions in the windows. I think there were some great comments made, but the color of the windows and doors was the only thing I would add to that, and that's my final comment. Thank you.
So just as a preamble to that, at the HDC, we do not have purview over color, unfortunately.
Okay, so, I'm new.
That's okay. But it is, we typically make recommendations in terms of what we feel would be historically appropriate for the era, for the style of the building. But ultimately, it is the applicant's decision.
Okay.
To take our recommendations or not. But thank you for your recommendations.
Okay.
So go ahead, applicant, if you'd like to respond to that.
Adam, is that something you'd like to respond to? Or?
Yeah, I was just trying to find my button. Sorry. We can look at it. The rendering we have done, we can switch the color out and take a look at it. I believe it is the fire station roughly across the street from this. One of the precedent images that we were looking at where the windows had been replaced and a dark bronze or black had been used in that project. So I think part of it's going to come down to certainly the preference of my client, but I think if it's beneficial to all, it would be pretty easy for us to at least take the Photoshop plan and be able to show you what the other options are.
Okay. Adam, just for your knowledge, that application, it's 10 Water Street, which is a couple doors down on Water Street on the same elevation. And those were solid mahogany windows that were used, and then they were painted or lacquered black.
Okay. Thank you.
So I don't think it was a synthetic finish that was used there. It was a painted on finish. Okay. With that, I'm going to go to the public.
You're going to look at my raised hand.
All right.
I just wanted to note that in the packet that was emailed to us, there is a rendering with the white windows and doors. So if you want to compare that with what you've seen.
Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm done.
All right. Doug, do you still have a raised hand? Did you have an additional comment?
No, I made my comment, but I might mention that I put white windows, just put some white windows on my house and got all kinds of help from my daughter about it not being fashionable, that I should have had black windows. So I think there is a marketing aspect to that decision.
Okay. I see no other hands raised from the commission members. or applicants or panelists. So I am now going to go to the attendees that we have that would be from the public. And Lori Couture has her hand raised. Exeter TV and or Bob, can you please unmute Lori so she may make a comment?
Hi, my name is Laurie A. Couture, and thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to speak. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I first want to say I believe the marquee is from the 1940s. I used to work at the Ayoka when I was 15 years old in 1990, and I had many, many talks with Jim Blanco, who was the manager at the time. He later became the owner. I had the unique opportunity of having such an intimate relationship with the Ayoka itself. Being 15 years old, my best friend and I were allowed by Jim on off hours to explore every nook and cranny of that building, and we were inside the marquee. I have seen both sides of the marquee up close and personal. I have looked inside the O from both sides, from the street side and from the inside, and I will tell you that if you keep that marquee on there, I will right now purchase the unit that would be so-calledly blocked by the marquee. I feel very strongly that we need to preserve the marquee. It is a lot older than I believe people think. I held the Wagner letters in my hand. I was also, my son and I, who my son is now deceased, my son and I were the marquee managers during the Exeter Theatre Company's restoration efforts. So I was one of the very last people, other than the previous owners, to touch the letters. And I even invented my own paper on how to space out the letters properly. So the marquee is very, very dear to me. It was an activity that my son and I got to do together. It's something that goes back to my childhood. My Nana in 1938 used to go to the Ayoka with her best friend and see movies, a whole smorgasbord of movies for a dime. I know that this commission is not concerned with the interior, but I do want to let you know that the Ayoka was the last theater in the country that had a working carbon arc projector. So I am passionate about preserving the Ayoka as it is. I have mixed feelings about moving the panels of the mayor building. I'm worried that those could get broken. However, at least you are preserving them. The fact of taking the marquee off the building is like stripping Exeter of one of its iconic features. It would be like taking the cupola off the town hall or removing the bandstand. The Ayoka Marquee is one of the first things you see when you come into town. When it lit up the night, it gave it such a speakeasy kind of feel at night. The emotions that come up when I see the marquee, even now, it's been vacant for 10 years. And when I come around the corner, the first thing I do is look to read the marquee, which Patrick said very fitly that, yes, even with 10 years of vacancy, the marquee still speaks. And I still to this day remember the feel of those large Wagner letters, which by the way are from the 40s. And I am fortunate to have a couple Wagner letters that Jim gave me. I have a large one. I donated a couple small ones to the Historical Society. So I also wrote an editorial in the Exeter newsletter on May 8th, arguing that the marquee does need to be saved. Every living person in Exeter that has a tie to Exeter, with the exception of somebody that's maybe was born in 1918, almost every living person in Exeter remembers the current marquee, not the old marquee that is long gone. If we had the original marquee, that would be one thing, but that marquee is long gone. And I don't see any reason why we cannot take the current marquee and preserve it like they preserved the Yoken sign in Portsmouth. It's a similar structure. I have been up there. I have put my hands on the marquee. It is a thin metal material like the Myokin sign, and the neon can either be replaced with real neon or LED neon. So I don't believe that that would be all that big of a project. Also, the Weirs Beach sign cost $1 million to restore because of all the lights. This would not be that big of a deal, but yet that town of Weirs, you know, the town of, I believe that's Guilford, they realized that the Weirs Beach sign was so iconic that to lose it would be losing a feature of their town. And I think we need to fight for the marquee. There's a lot of things that we can't control right now, but we can control this. And once it's off the building, it's gone. And so I will be, if it's about pleasing future potential renters, I will rent that space happily and have that marquee be my viewpoint. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lori, for your comments. I will open it back up to the applicants or the ownership for any rebuttal.
David, do you want to comment on this?
I don't think so. I think we fully understand that the marquee is sentimental to a lot of folks in Exeter, and you know, we appreciate that.
Okay. In terms of discussion of that, has there been any thoughts of preserving the marquee? Have there been any thoughts in terms of an application that would show the marquee still in place?
Our preference is not to have the marquee stay. But that's the purpose of this meeting, is to get some feedback and to think more about it.
Okay. All right. So then, let's see. We do have Sharon Summers has her hand raised. Sharon, you'd like to make a comment?
Got to unmute yourself there.
Go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. David actually kind of beat me to the punch. I was simply going to say that from our perspective, the purpose of this meeting is to simply to listen to the commentary and to take all of that under advisement. We'll go home and take a look at some of these comments and do our homework. But I think for purposes of tonight, we're really not prepared to getting into a detailed discussion other than to, as David said, indicate certainly our strong preference is to have the marquee removed. So with that, I appreciate all the detailed comments that was just provided by the previous speaker, but we are not really ready to engage in a detailed response to any of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then at this time, being that this is a information collection, question and comment session for this application, I'm going to ask that the rest of I see your hand raised, Julie, I'll call on you in a second, that the rest of our board members, please think about any comments or questions or additional information that would be needed for a subsequent meeting, so that we would have enough information to accept an application of this type. We're not going to do that tonight, but it is to make sure that there is a list of information that the applicant has, so that they can come prepared for the next meeting. And with that, I'll call on Julie. Julie, if you don't mind adding anything to the comments you're about to make.
Well, actually, that was one of the comments I was about to make. On the slide that's currently being shared with us, I don't have a copy of that photo on the left, and I would really love to get one. If you can send it to the planning department, and yeah, that one, and they can disperse it to us. And then the other is that if our commission members have comments or questions, that they should all be sent to Patrick as our chair, and not to all of us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So Patrick, you can accumulate them and when we send out the next packet that this discussion is happening in, you can send those out. And if there are responses to it, you can send them in the packet then.
Okay. Right. We have another hand raised from a participant, which is Linda Wade. Linda, there is another Linda W. I'm hoping it's the same person, not sure. But please, Exeter TV, can you unmute Linda Wade, please? Linda, if you can see that you can unmute yourself, go ahead. Exeter TV, I don't have the ability to unmute her. Can you please do so?
Taking a moment. Zoom sometimes likes to wait on unmuting for some.
Okay. Okay, Linda, can we hear you? No.
Linda, do you have the, it'll look like a microphone with a red X through it on the bottom left. If you want to click that to unmute yourself. And if you're having any issues with the audio, Linda, you can go to the agenda and you can call back with a telephone and call in that way. Again, we'll see your phone pop up if you're having issues with your computer or phone or whatever you're on right now.
Okay, Linda, until we get that figured out, I'm going to go back to our commission members and ask for their comments of additional items needed for this application. I'll first start with Doug. Doug, if you want to go ahead and let the applicant know if there's any information additionally that you feel we need to review so that we would be able to accept the application.
Well, I think there's a number of open issues that we'd like to get some feedback from them about. I can't think of any additional issues beyond what we've already discussed.
Okay. Pam?
Okay, am I?
You're live.
I'm live. All right. We've covered everything I can think of except for that big square of elevator HVAC up on the top. I forget which slide it was, but I'd like to know how big it is and what actually is in it. This thing. Yes, that's it. I hardly noticed it from the front, and then it was huge from the back.
Okay, so further clarification on the overall height of the building and what the height of that is above the existing building, as you were asking for?
Yes.
The material and the color?
Well, that too.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Pam?
No, they've covered everything.
Okay.
Patrick, if you don't mind, just Linda Wade, if you can hear us, it looks like you're frozen because we can't even do any controls with you right now. So if you still want to say something later on, if you could just leave the meeting and come back, that might fix the issue.
Okay, thank you. Curtis?
The additional information that I would ask for is if there's a centralized ventilation system that is a rooftop unit, to have that included in the drawings, the approximate size, and then localized ventilation if you're planning on cutting ventilation for laundry, bathroom, or kitchen. If that's going to be coming through the wall, we would want to see what that would be. So yeah, just the mechanical systems and ventilation, what that would look like.
Okay, mechanical system penetrations through existing elevations and rooftop location and size?
Approximate, yes.
I don't remember seeing a roof plan in our packet. If there is one there, that's great. And if that equipment could be located on it, even better. All right, Julie?
I think everybody's covered what I wanted to see, and I had a thought while you were talking, and now it's gone, so I guess it wasn't that important. I wanted to ask you, Patrick, in our application, we ask for window and door treatment samples. How do we do that virtually?
I think it's going to have to be as a digital cut sheet from the manufacturer that is the desired manufacturer. The color we don't necessarily have purview over, but
I know, but you always like to look at the design of the details, make sure it's not going to do any harm to the building.
I think that most manufacturers are going to have detailed cut sheets with three-dimensional pictures that are close-ups.
Yeah.
If there are brick mold or if there's other things that can be added to that, either through Photoshop or other means to replicate what that would look like in the existing opening, that would be very favorable in this format.
Yeah. Okay. And then are you going to arrange for some kind of site visit-y thing? After the windows are investigated, I guess?
I would say yes. That I think that the next step in terms of my questions about brick color, brick matching, and also window details was once they get into the removal of a window. And it can be our specific call to ask for one of the windows to be removed in a less conspicuous elevation for that investigation, to allow that investigation to happen. We can ask for a special exception for that.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think that I'm going to ask Adam and the other applicants you are going to need to remove a window to be able to bring the recommendations of the proposed windows back in a subsequent application, I assume. Is that correct? Or is there enough investigating you can do leaving the windows in place?
I think we'll start with the investigation of the windows being in place. Just that we're not opening the building up to the elements. We'll determine how much information we can get off of that, and then see what the opportunities are to remove one of the windows potentially.
Okay.
We'll figure out the best to approach that with the board.
Okay, so then I'm going to make a recommendation that in a subsequent meeting, if needs be, we would call for a special exception to allow one of the windows on an inconspicuous space to be removed for that investigation. Bob, I'm going to ask if we can go back to the attendee. Linda Wade again has a hand still raised. I'm not sure if that's frozen in place or if she is available to make a comment.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
I managed to unmute myself. The little microphone wasn't there before.
Okay.
Just a minute. I think I'm I'm on the phone and I'm also listening to the.
Yeah, so it's like when you call into a radio station. So if you could mute what you're listening to it on and just talk through the phone, then you'll still hear everything.
Can you hear me? I hung up the phone, actually.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I wanted to thank Laurie A. Couture, because her comments were very eloquent and they touched my heart. I have lived in Exeter since I was born, most of my life, in 1950. And the Ayoka meant everything to me. That sign is very iconic. And I also was concerned with moving the cement mayor building insert and the two inserts on the side. It just seems to me that those could be damaged. And also, why would they need to do a simulated or the little curved decorative pieces over the center windows? Why could they not preserve those? Or there are a lot of historical places in the country that people who have historical homes, they go out of their way to buy things like that. They have things like that so that they're not using something artificial or plastic. And I also noticed how flat the building looked with the new rendering, with the new idea. And I didn't realize that was going to step right out into the street. The backdrop of how the original doors were much more aesthetic. I did agree with, I don't remember his name. There was a gentleman speaking who was an architect that who was concerned with the structure on the roof there too. I agreed with him on that, and preserving the historical nature of the building. What really sort of concerned me was that Laurie A. Couture said, I would be happy to rent that unit so that we can keep the Ayoka sign. But obviously, the reason that it will block the tenant there was not the main reason they want to take down that Ayoka sign, because the owner did not even want to say, yeah, sure, we can keep it now. That obviously was only a ruse to get it through, because she is saying, I will be happy to have that Ayoka sign there and rent the unit. So that is a moot point. We don't need to remove the sign if she says that. And yet it seems that the owner still wants to remove it, and that is quite confusing to me. And like I said, I am concerned about moving the cement or even the brick. You know, there are a lot of historical brick or maybe they could even be very careful about removing it. I'm sure they are careful when they work on historical houses, such as Strawberry Bank. There's a lot of information people could get from a place like that, where they preserve everything. And even Exeter has historical houses. There's a historical society in Exeter. So if that was the intention, to preserve the historical look of the building, we have a lot of very educated people that have knowledge of this in our area, because this is New England, and that would be very easy to access those people for their advice. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Just a point of clarification for the rest of the viewers and participants. The arched tops that are in the center three windows on the second floor, those precast panels are to remain, is my understanding. Those would exist and they would not be removed. Those would remain. Okay. with that, I'm going to close let me check one more time if we have any other hands raised. We do. Julie has a hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to, speak to the public that these meetings, this particular meeting is just a review and no decisions are being made about anything that we've been discussing tonight. And I would stay away from making assumptions or assuming an answer by anybody that's presented tonight from the architects and engineers, designers, and the owner. I don't think it's fair to have that not conversation. And this isn't the place to have that forum. But I thank you for your comments.
Yes, thank you, Julie. I think they were clear about collecting information tonight, but not necessarily having any rebuttal or making any concessions tonight or having that discussion. So that will be in subsequent meetings. And with that, I do not see any additional hands raised at this time. So I'm going to close the public hearing for this application at this time and thank the applicant, the architect, and everyone for participating and providing your comments and questions. I think it was quite productive given the circumstances that we are in right now. And I truly appreciate the level of detail and the level of work that went into this application. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
And with that, you feel free to hang out and listen to the rest of our meeting. But if nothing else, feel free to bow out digitally. Under other business, we have the approval of minutes for February 2020. And we also have the election of officers for, I can't believe it, it's May again. So the approval of meeting minutes, commission members all go through and ask, I think we can do this in more of a free flowing if you want to unmute yourselves and give comments about the draft minutes for February 2020. Any revisions that need to happen. Take it away. Pam, go ahead.
Yes, just some spelling errors. On the front page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines up, it talks about she, meaning me, does miss the lattice work. And in the next work said that the lattice was very thick. Well, lattice is spelled Lattice, not Latus. This is why you shouldn't trust spell check. And again, on the very last page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4 down. We're talking about 7 Oak Street. They came in on a Sunday and raised the house. But we want to spell it R-A-Z-E-D, not R-A-I-S, which would mean that they lifted it up, which they didn't.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Curtis, Doug, Gwen, any other?
Just a quick one. On the second page, about a third of the way up, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's like 13 lines up from the bottom, right in the middle of the page. There's a capital P, and I'm not sure what that is meant to say, but it's kind of a lone letter. The sentence starts off with Curtis thinks.
It's an interesting thing to include the P. That's interesting. Very interesting.
I'm not sure what that was.
I don't know. I think it was the start of a sentence that maybe never happened. Curtis, can you recall what that comment was about?
P is something that happened it could be a record of something that's happened over the years or a register, but I'm not sure what the P refers to.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Curtis, do you have any objection to striking that entire line?
No, feel free to strike that line.
Okay, thank you. All right. Gwen, did you have any other comments? No? Okay, Curtis, do you have any?
No comment.
All right. Julie.
I was not at the meeting.
All righty.
I hope you're abstaining from this vote.
All right. Then, other than Julie, Doug, Gwen, Curtis, myself, and Pam are available, and we're there. May I call for a motion to accept the draft minutes as noted?
Wait a minute. I had to leave the room.
Okay.
Water. Did anyone get the mutton wits?
Nope, we didn't get that.
Also matching the mutton wits of the existing on the
last page. Second to last page?
Yeah.
What line? How many lines from top or bottom?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About 15 from the bottom. If they are portrait, made them portrait. I guess
there it is. Yep.
Also matching the mutton wits, and I don't know what a mutton wit is, so I was just curious.
Mutton widths.
Widths. Okay.
Yep, mutton widths.
Got it. And then
right. Good one.
At the last page, basically ring your hands. I think that's ring in your hands is WRING.
Yes, sorry. Yes, it is.
Correctly? Yeah. Okay.
WRING.
Ring your hands. You got that?
Okay.
And there was on the second page kind of a. That was exciting.
Go ahead, Doug.
There's something concerning me. He said you're talking about it. I said, Doug said it looks very nice and he likes it. And he said he is concerned about how the garage door will look. He thinks it might take some of the cleanness away. Doug agreed. So I'm not sure who's saying what. There's Dave and Doug, and I remember I like the idea of a clean garage door. It's kind of confusing.
What page are you on? What line?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the second page. About a third of the way down, we're talking about the garage door. It's not a major deal.
Okay.
Maybe just strike Doug agreed because that makes it confusing.
Strike Doug agreed. Gotcha.
It doesn't.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'm really sorry that there's no such thing as a mutton wit. That sounds pretty good.
Mutton chop.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So with no other comments, I did find one myself actually on the last page, second paragraph down, first line, December 2919. It'll be 2019. That was the only one that I found just in looking at this again. So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to accept the draft minutes for February 20, 2020 as noted.
I move to accept the draft minutes as with the changes that we have mentioned.
Okay. Now, do I have a second? Second? Okay. With that, we have to do the quorum votes as a roll call. So, Julie, you want to start it off?
I abstain. I was not at the meeting.
That's right. Sorry. Gwen?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Curtis?
Aye.
And myself, Patrick? Aye. So approved as amended. As amended. Alrighty. Under other business, we also have the election of officers. Up for re-election are the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary. Is that correct? Is it secretary? Clerk. I'm sorry. Clerk. Of those three, I'm happy to accept any nominations of anyone at any time. Anyone would like to call out a nomination of someone in particular? Feel free, please.
Well, first, let me ask Patrick, how comfortable are you with being a chair for a third year? Do you want to retire, or will you take it up again?
I would gladly continue if you deem me fit to proceed.
You are so fit. You are wonderful.
Well, does anyone else want to nominate somebody, or is anybody else interested?
I nominate Patrick to remain as the chair of the board.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor? I guess we'll go by roll call once again. Julie?
Aye.
Gwen?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Curtis?
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. On to the office of the vice chair. I would like to personally nominate Curtis Bovin for his exemplary work and for covering for me when I am not available to run these meetings. I think he's done a fantastic job, and I appreciate his comments every meeting. So he is an asset to have as a chair, vice chair. So I nominate Curtis.
I will second that with the same words behind backing me up.
All right. So may I have a vote for Curtis to remain as vice chair? Julie?
Aye.
Gwen?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And myself, Patrick? Aye. So thank you, Curtis.
Thank you.
For another year. I guess we should have asked you if you were.
Oops.
We should have voted Doug when he went to the bathroom. All right. The final position would be for clerk. And for clerk, I'm happy to nominate Pam to continue as clerk. If you would like to accept as a nomination.
Sure.
Okay, great.
I'll second it.
Great. Thank you very much, Pam. Your knowledge on this board is invaluable, not only from a historical perspective, but just the knowledge of this board alone and the previous applications. So thank you. May I call for a vote for Pam Jedham to remain as clerk for the HDC in Exeter? Julie?
Aye.
Gwen?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Curtis?
Aye.
And myself, Patrick? Aye. Yes. Thank you very much, Pam, for continuing for another year. So with that, I am at the end of other business, and I'll open up the floor to any other questions, comments, or additional information that any board members would like to share or have any other business to discuss at this time.
I'll raise my hand.
All right, please go ahead.
Coming from the Heritage Commission, we're looking at a project that we're calling, the state calls it a neighborhood heritage district, but we're just going to call it a heritage neighborhood. And it's a different gathering of information and on properties and identifying qualifying structures and helping a neighborhood celebrate itself and learning the history of what went on before they moved in. But it's not a regulatory body. It's just people knowing people kind of thing and documenting what's around them. So we're talking about that. You'll see announcements coming out. If you live in the Park Street area, you might get a door hanger that says, hey, come on down. We're going to have some kind of public meeting when possible.
Yep.
So everybody can hear about what these are, and we might see a few spreading up around town.
So as a heritage neighborhood, what would it do necessarily? Create information about...
It's a HDC light. In other words, without having a thick booklet of rules, you would, anyone who wants to tear down a house, redo their house, really change their house, should go to this group of neighbors and say what they want to do.
Okay.
It can be either really good for a neighborhood or not. Just check in with homeowners associations. It's going to be kind of like that.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Everybody loves those.
Yeah. It could be very good. You know, I've noticed that neighborhoods are getting closer together, partly because of the times that we're in right now, but that block parties, people want to have block parties, and you send one person an email and it goes all across their neighborhood. So that's coming back, and I think this would be a really nice addition to how people are socializing.
Okay.
And remember, it's not regulatory.
Right.
Because basically, we
as
would
an advisory board.
We'd like to get the Park Street, Cass Street, Green Street to be part of the HDC, but we know that they would never take that. So we think that they might accept this HDC light version.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's it. Okay.
So an announcement of that, is there anything that we as HDC need to do towards that effort?
Not yet.
Okay. All right. Well, let us know.
Yeah, well, at most you're going to have to be there to say, we don't do what you're doing, or you don't do what we're doing.
Okay. Gotcha. Fair enough.
But that'll be a times away, so.
Just curious, Julie, if you know, with everything that's going on, has the ZBA met and has the Smith family continued their appeal of our decision on that house?
I do not know that. I don't.
Okay.
I can look at the meetings webpage to see.
Okay. Just curious. I went to 3 meetings in a row before all of this, and then it all went away. So.
I know they took off March. I don't know about April.
Okay. All right. Any other information out there? Any other comments? Anything to share?
No.
No? Okay.
Mr. Chair.
All right. No second needed for that. Thank you, everyone.